Welcome back to another video of this course. You are enjoying it, aren't you? Well, if you're new to this, I'm Aarzoo Khurana and I'm sharing with you a decade of my experience in photography through the series of these videos. Today, we discuss aperture. Aperture is basically the opening that you have inside the lens, and this makes it the property of the lens and not the camera. Think about the pupil of your eyes. If you go to darker places, the iris in your eyes will expand, controlling the size of the pupil. It basically lets in more light. And similarly, if you go to a brighter place, the iris contracts to curtail the flow of light entering through the pupil. So aperture is basically the pupil of your camera. Now see here, I can open and close the entrance pupil using my camera. In some lenses, you have an option to open and close it through this ring as well. Now obviously, bigger the size of the aperture, more light will enter inside the camera, and smaller the size of the aperture, less light will enter inside the camera and hit the sensor. So if you want more light to hit the sensor, you open it up to the maximum your lens supports, and if you want to curtail the flow of light, you close the aperture down to how much ever solves your purpose. Now understand how you operate the aperture in your setup. You must have heard about a 400 f2.8 or a 600 f4. Here, the f/number denotes the aperture value. And then there are lenses like a 200, 600, 5.6 to 6.3. Here it means that on a 200, your f number can go down to f5.6. And on 600, it can go down to 6.3. It cannot go below that. Like in a 400 mm f2.8, 2.8 is the maximum you can open up your aperture to. Similarly, in a 600 f4, 4 is the maximum you can open it up to. So whenever you switch your camera on and mount the lens, you will be able to see this f number setting. You can increase or decrease it using this dial here. Now once you reach the minimum f number your lens supports, you won't be able to go below that, because obviously that is the maximum the entrance pupil inside your lens can open up to. And as to increase the f number, you can simply rotate the dial in the opposite direction, and this is the maximum I can close it down to. Now you know what is aperture and how you can change it. Here comes another important piece of information. When you lower down your f number, you are basically widening the aperture. So smaller the f number, bigger will be the opening inside the lens. And if you increase the f number, the hole inside the lens will get smaller. So when you want to wide open the aperture, reduce the f number. But the question is, why do we have to make it big or small in the first place? Of course, the amount of light is one reason. Like if you have scarcity of light, basically a low light situation, you need a bigger opening so that more light can enter inside the camera. Remember the theory of reciprocity? And if you don't know what is the theory of reciprocity, then check the video tagged above here. Also, if I'm able to add any value through these videos, down below is the subscribe button and you can consider liking it too. Okay, enough self-promotion. Now let's get back to it. At the same time, the aperture is responsible for the blur that you see in the background of a photograph and foreground of a photograph. Now repeat with me. Smaller the f number, more the blur. Larger the f number, lesser the blur. They are inversely proportional. And this blur is also called bokeh or bokeh, whatever you want to pronounce it as. Now, if you want more bokeh, you open up the aperture. How do you open it up? You decrease the f number. Now, there is something else, and this is the right time to introduce you to depth of field. In all these images, there is some area which appears to be in focus in front of the plane of focus and at back of the plane of focus. This area is our depth of field. Remember this, your camera can focus only on one plane at a time. Imagine a 2D plane. All the subjects in that plane will automatically be in focus, irrespective of your f number. But what about the area which looks like it is in focus, but it is actually outside the plane of focus? That area is called depth of field. Now the area closer to the plane of focus will always be relatively more sharp as compared to the area which is far from plane of focus. You want to see a detailed video on depth of field? Check the video I'm tagging above. Now, shallow depth of field is when you have less area appearing to be in focus. Basically, more blur, more bokeh. We use this all the time when we need soft, creamy bokeh either in front of the subject or at the back of the subject. And deeper depth of field is basically when you have more area appearing to be in focus around the focusing plane. Basically less blur, like in landscape or architecture photography, or even when you want to shoot multiple subjects in the same frame. There's another way of remembering it. Larger the f number, larger the depth of field. Smaller the f number, smaller is the depth of field. Now let's see its practical implications. Okay, now let's take help of these pine cones and check the effect of f number on depth of field. Right now f2.8 is my f value, so it's the widest I can go on this lens. And let me click an image. Check this. Properly sharp, detailed image. Now let's say if I want to increase the depth of field, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop down the aperture to f4, then I'm going to stop it down to f5.6, and I'm going to stop it down to f9, and I'm going to stop it down further to f13. Let's increase it further, stop it down further to f18 and f22. There you go. Now keep looking at the pine cone which is at the back, not in the front. Check how it changes, check how the depth of field changes, and check how gradually it appears to be in focus but it is not actually in focus. Now let's say if I keep two subjects in the same plane of focus. Let's see this. Okay, and I open the aperture to f2.8 and focus on any of those subjects. Let's say I focus over here. This is the part which is the plane of focus, and check this pine cone. On 2.8 also, because it is on the same plane, it is in focus. So basically what happens is, as I told you, your camera can focus only on one plane at a time. Now if you place multiple subjects in that same plane, doesn't matter what your f number is, all the subjects are going to be in focus. However, if you keep it back a little towards the other side and then shoot, then automatically it's going to come out blur, which means that that particular subject, the elephant in our case, is outside the plane of focus. Now if I want to make sure that it appears to be in focus, here I will have to increase the f number. Let's say if I increase it to f22 and shoot. Now you can check the difference. And interestingly, if you pay attention, the entire pine cone on 2.8 also is not properly in focus. The particular area of the pine cone which is actually falling on the focusing point is the area which is in sharp focus. However, at the back and in front of the pine cone also the area is blur, which means that on 2.8 I'm getting a very shallow depth of field, and when I increase it further I get a deeper depth of field. Okay, now I hope you have a better idea about aperture and its connection with depth of field. There are other topics related to depth of field, like how exactly it is affected, circle of confusion, other factors, etc. But that is something I'm going to cover in the advanced course, which is going to be a separate series of videos coming out soon. See you in the next video.